Thank you. Looks like we have everybody, so we'll get started. Good evening. Welcome to the August 8th, 2023 meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. I'll start with the script for remotely conducted meetings. We're using Zoom for this meeting. As a preliminary matter, this is Arthur Gasparo, Chair of the Nantucket Airport Commission. All speakers on the agenda, all speakers at tonight's meeting will be using Zoom, and the meeting will be recorded. Please use care not to share your screen, or you may be captured by the recording. Please speak clearly that to ensure accurate meeting minutes. And please be sure to introduce yourself and speak through the chair. And finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And with that, again, the meeting is being both audio and video recorded to be posted at a later date on the YouTube channel. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the agenda as published?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. We have the July 11th, 2023 draft minutes for approval or for adoption. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the draft minutes?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted by unanimous consent. We have to ratify the warrants of June 30th and July 19th. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? I muted, but sorry, an aye there. There you go. And the chair votes aye. Is there any public comment for items that are not otherwise on the agenda? You could wave your virtual hand or speak up. Hearing none. We'll move on to pending leases and contracts set forth on Exhibit 1. I'll turn it over to Mr. Carberg, and if we could please share the screen for those while we go over them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Boyana, would you share the screen? Otherwise, I could bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for the screen to come up. Do you want me to try, Boyana? I'm still seeing that it's
Buffering.
buffering on your screen.
Nope, there we go. Perfect.
Oh, it's good. Okay. Sorry. Can you see it now?
No, not yet.
I can do it if you, oh, there you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Boyana. The first item on Exhibit 1 is a memorandum of agreement with TSA. This is part of a nationwide project to identify and update TSA baggage systems at airports. TSA will be upgrading 3 items associated with the checked bag resolution area. This is the area where suspected bags are hand checked after screening through the explosive detection system. So the CBRA, or checked bag resolution area work itself, involves reconfiguring of the bag belt to operate more efficiently and ergonomically for the inspectors. The airport currently owns the bag belt system now, and the MOA spells out that we will continue to own and maintain the improvements after they're completed and accepted. We have a change order for the taxiway golf project for $23.30. This is the net change after utility location services were added and after an underage in an other cost item.
Can I interrupt you very quickly, Mr. Carberg? Boyana, we're seeing your regular desktop and not the exhibit.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to let you know. Thank you. Go ahead. Excuse me.
Okay. Next items in the exhibit are a series of amendments for Toscana. Amendment 1 identifies post-survey Toscana's new leasehold is slightly smaller than that which was issued on the original RFP. Subsequently, the leasehold for Nantucket Oasis is larger, which is pending on the agenda. So that amendment adjusts for this. Amendment 2 is related to Toscana is providing access to Nantucket Oasis, while the airport adjusts the perimeter fence to provide transformer access and increase the vehicle access for bunker tenants. I wanted to thank Oasis and Toscana for their cooperation on this. But what Amendment 2 identifies is that the airport will credit Toscana for the lands not usable to them while they're temporarily providing across their lot access for Nantucket Oasis. The access license that denotes this arrangement is also appended in your packet for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Kyberg. Are there any questions or comments on the pending leases and contracts? I'm going to, I need to recuse from the Toscana votes, so I think I will just, to keep things simple for the commission, I will just recuse from all of them and turn it over to Ms. Planzer for the action.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so the memorandum of agreement, correct, is our first one. Okay, so memorandum of agreement with the Department of Homeland Security. Contract amendment for Victor Brandon, and the 2 lease amendments for Toscana Corporation. We have a motion to approve those agreements.
So moved.
Okay, any, and a second?
Second.
And do we have any discussion on any of those items? None heard. Okay, shall we take a vote? Let's see. Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Aye. And Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
And Mr. Phil? I think it's muted, but I see an aye. And Vice Chair votes aye.
Thank you. So that carries unanimously with myself recused. And we'll move on to declaration of surplus property on Bunker Road. Mr. Carberg.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 2 separate declarations for the Commission's review and approval. The first is for a lot that we've internally called the impound lot. It's bordered by the SRE to the south, the airport fence to the west, and tenant leaseholds to the north. The land was recently appraised at $2.50 per square foot. This is the parcel we've identified as an impound lot associated with mixed storage. The issue we've been grappling with as staff is that we believe an impound lot function is needed. However, the use of an impound lot is regulated and capped by the Department of Public Utilities, which artificially lowers the revenue available from an impound function. We don't think it would support a dedicated impound lot. So as part of this, we will issue an RFP that combines a dedicated use of approximately 10 to 20 vehicles with a auto repair and or miscellaneous storage use that could generate higher revenues that we hope can offset the impound operation. Specifically, we have received informal interest from a party in running an auto repair shop, and I hope that pairs well with this use. The second declaration is for portions of 77 and 79 Bunker Road. These were also recently appraised at $2.25 per square foot. These are portions of the leasehold behind, portions of property behind the existing Highland Barge or Victor Brandon leasehold and the existing Toscano leasehold. It's a small portion of the lot. It's not the entire lot. The two pieces combined are 23,652 square feet. And we will release it for miscellaneous purposes consistent with other uses in that area. And it would be at the commission's discretion, I think, if they wanted to take one or both of these at the same time.
Are there any questions? Further discussion on the declaration of surplus property? Is there a motion to declare, to make that declaration?
Make
So-
that motion.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks? And the chair votes aye. It carries unanimously. Next, we have a minimum standards update, Mr. Carberg.
Thank you. So for your review and vote is a minor revision to airport minimum standards. The update is specific to, I will bring it up and then share the page. Sorry, please bear with me. Okay, thank you. The update is specific to section L or page 77 of the packet and adds the phrase "at all times." This is in response to the stranded passenger plan and creeping delay policy for late night flight cancellation contingency planning. We implemented this in the spring. Airport staff, airline personnel, and the airport LEO all have dedicated roles, and the one we have identified for airline staff, our airline personnel, is to staff the ticket counter in the event of a late night cancellation to answer passenger questions until such time as passengers either depart the terminal or airport staff lock the terminal for the evening. I don't see it as a big change or a heavy ask. I think it's consistent for how we've written and implemented our minimum standards. So I put it forward for your approval. At this time, I have reached out to airline staff by email. I corresponded with one representative from an airline, but I've not received any written comments. And I do not see any airline staff in attendance at this time. It's for your vote.
Are there any questions or further discussion for this change? And is this something that you want us to take an actual vote on, Mr. Carberg?
Yes, I believe we have the commission adopt minimum standards revisions, which
So
you could.
is there a motion to adopt the revision to the minimum standards?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks? And chair votes aye. Thank you. And PFAS water policy, Mr. Carberg?
Okay, we have a policy update in the packet for your discussion. I will share that now as well. And again, I'll be asking for the commission's adoption and approval of this policy revision. I'm on page 90 of the packet. Again, it is a minimal redlining of the policy just here on page 2. What this policy revision does is it will extend bottled water service until February 28th of 2024 for a small group of residents west of the airport who don't have traditional curb access to a water main. The reason for this extension is that the town's water main project is anticipated, of course, subject to scheduling and site conditions, to start on September 11th. So I'd like to acknowledge that schedule for time to complete the water main, plus a 90-day grace period after completion and commissioning of the main, for residents to continue to receive bottled water service before we would continue bottled water service, and the residents would be able to connect to the water main that would now be at their curb. This extension will continue automatically. We do not need the residents to respond and notify the airport. I've reached out to this ownership group for comments by email. I have not received any. I do not believe I see any in attendance, but I'll stop the screen share momentarily so we can check the attendance list. But I would recommend adoption. The commission could always revisit the policy, and if they see that it's warranted, we can extend the policy further.
Are there any questions regarding the policy as drafted in our packet?
No.
Any comments? Members of the public? I'm not seeing any, so is there a motion to adopt the revised policy?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? And the chair votes aye. And that takes us to finance, Mr. Coburg.
Okay, thank you. We're starting with a capital project budget update for fiscal year 25. We have further reviewed and updated our capital project list as we work with towns towards approval for fiscal year 25 capital at annual town meeting in May. We have removed one project, we've updated our cost estimates, and we've appended some additional supporting documentation. As these project forms will be shared through the process with Capital Commission, FinCom, and the Select Board, I did want to start here with them. I don't plan on going through each single page of the project list, but I wanted to highlight the major changes. The first significant change that you won't see it here because it's a cut. We removed the $1.2 million capital packet for electrification. I think we still believe in the end goal, which is providing electric charging infrastructure for passenger vehicles, ground service equipment, and even aircraft. But staff and I share some cost concerns with escalation in cost and other higher priority projects. So I'll use the baseball metaphor. We think we can play small ball on this one and pursue a series of smaller projects and grant funded projects for individual chargers, individual design studies, and still move forward for that goal. For the ramp high mast light replacements, I believe the budget number has stayed the same, but we have more detailed support in the packet based on bids received for the south ramp. No significant update for PFAS phase 2. For parking lot and access road, we have defined a specific project within the parking lot for a mill and overlay. We've also increased the price based off of the recently received bid prices for asphalt. We think that's the smallest project that's worth undertaking. For ground and lightning project, we actually have a parallel project for our upcoming operational budget. This is to study and respond to the fact that lightning strikes repeatedly are taking out items in the fuel farm, the terminal, and remote gates. So we want to better understand why grounding systems don't seem to work. Initial indications are there's an electric potential difference that's rendering grounding ineffective. We have an item for catch basin cleaning and replacement that is escalated after engineering review. And then we have no change to paint and beads and rubber marking removal. I'd be happy to take any questions on the capital packets before moving on to the fourth quarter report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Carver, suggested changes?
Nope.
Concerns with the approach for the capital projects? I think that sounds like a positive green light forward. Do you want a formal adoption of those? I don't think we typically do, or do you want to vote on that?
I don't think I need a vote.
Right. So. Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so Bono, would you mind sharing the fourth quarter? Actually, why don't I do it? I'll talk through it. Thanks. So we have received the fourth quarter end of year fiscal report. I wanted to thank Jamie, who is unable to attend today, and Town Finance Manager Brian Turbot. They have a continual loop of communication that gets us to this point. I want to be sure they receive their share of credit for our success. It was a positive financial year despite a difficult labor and inflationary environment. And we have reason for both optimism and caution. For revenue, revenue increased by 10% over fiscal year 22. Fuel sales, land rental income, and fee income were major drivers of this increase. Revenue increased despite operations decreasing 10% and employments remaining static. The way I like to put it is that the airport has played the hand it was dealt well. We've taken advantage of increased general aviation Jet A uplifts and increasing business activity. For expenses have increased by 22% over 2022, but I urge a little bit of caution still in the comparison, as fiscal year 22 is still reflecting some CARES grants money, especially for payroll. Some of the drivers of increased expenses were retirement payouts. Thankfully, these were buffered by previous stabilization fund planning accomplished by Jamie and Brian Turbot. We had high operating expenses this year due to inflation and also due to outsourcing of items we might have done in-house because of our inability to fill positions. Our fuel expenses were higher, but they were offset by revenue. One of the challenges we're going to continue to have into fiscal year 24 is forecasting our expenses is a lot more difficult, a lot more challenging than forecasting our revenues. And it's a challenge to stay under our expenses while we also can't necessarily demonstrate the future revenues in a budget cycle. So we continue to work with that. On our summary sheet, we have a net earnings of 8.5 million, a surplus of 7 million, and a projected fund balance of 7.5 million. We plan to continue to advocate a policy of using the fund balance to pay down debt items in the upcoming year instead of taking them to long-term borrow. I cited reasons for optimism and for caution. For optimism, I think staff are adapting very well to changes in fleet and services. They're adapting to inflation. We have room to increase rates and charges. We have historically low rates that we assess to our aviation operators, and we can adjust accordingly as our costs for providing services increase. Also, we've continued to run the playbook, which is non-aeronautical land use development. As leases turn over and go back out through the RFP cycle, they're worth modern appraised values as these legacy leases turn over. And we will also continually adjust our rates and charges. The caution that we bring forward is we need continued stewardship of our projected fund balance to pay down debt. In this high cost environment, even our sponsor share of funded AIP projects is substantial. And any debt payment increase will increase our operating expenses. So we do need to be careful in identifying and managing long-term debt accordingly. We are in a good position, but we need to make sure we stay in a good position. Are there any questions on the summary or the broader financial report?
Any questions or comments?
No,
No, it's looking good. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Moving on to the PFAS investigation update. We have a table in your packet. We are still at 80 samples taken, 545 samples taken from 80 individual wells. We are currently reviewing the fall sampling task order from McFarland Johnson and Weston Solutions. The practicality is that our fall sampling will merge with our spring sampling with the drilling portion that was delayed due to contractor availability and boat scheduling. So functionally, they will both be occurring at the same time. An item of note is that our initial PFAS appropriation of $8 million made at the 2021 actual town meeting, we are nearing that cap in actual expense dollars. I believe we have expensed 7.3 million, not including any amounts currently encumbered. So we may be in a position to delay some work from our spring sampling until post July 1st. We are going for additional appropriation at this town meeting. I expect to see it, but some work may be delayed by a couple of months as we run into this cap. Two more items. We have our IRA status report due at the end of August and a consultant presentation to present that report in the September meeting. In all likelihood, with next month's PFAS report, I will be introducing Cameron Woods, our new environmental coordinator, to provide the PFAS update, as well as lead the consultants, work with Jim to lead, Jim Sukup at Weston, to lead the consultants PFAS presentation. Are there any questions before I move into crew quarters?
Anyone?
All right. So I have a few items before I'm going to introduce Bill Cox for the consultant presentation. Bracken Engineering and Toscana completed the geotechnical and the soils investigation. I believe that was last week. The modular RFP for the building will be issued and available to the public on or around the 17th. Our goal is to have the site RFP for general contractor also issued September 7th. So our entire bid package is back by October 7th to inform if we need any special town meeting action. We have a placeholder article for special town meeting now, just in case we do need any additional appropriation. Very quickly, I don't want to step on Phil's toes here, but we've taken the initial architectural design to the Historical District Commission, Nantucket Fire Department. I appreciate the review and comments. We're incorporating them. We will be back to HDC to finalize the site layout and address any comments once the minutes are published. We will continue to move through the planning and design phases, and I've asked Mr. Cox at our OPM at CHA Consulting to provide an update on these meetings and review with you here our proposed draft site concepts that we would bring into the next HDC meeting. So, Bill,
Thank you, Noah. Chairman Gasparo and members of the commission, thanks for allowing me to speak to you guys today. As Noah has stated, we had some pretty good progress in the last month on the progress for the crew quarters. If I can share my screen here, I'll give you an update on if everybody can see that. This is what we have been bringing to most recently the fire department, who gave us their blessing on this layout. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. When we originally brought this to the Historic District Commission, the building was orientated 90 degrees to this, with the rear side facing the bicycle path and there was members of the Historic District Commission were a little concerned about the orientation that way. So we have since gone back and revised this to show it with this orientation, which I think works out well. It projects a much smaller view from the Nobodere Farm Road, and we believe we can screen this side of the building quite well to give the residents a little more privacy from the rear yard. The good news is that we don't have to do a large circular turnaround for the fire department. They said the hammerhead here would suffice, and that has gone well. They also had a comment they wanted to get a fire hydrant off of Nobodere Farm Road and an additional fire hydrant within the property, most likely on the southeast corner where it's shown here. We have a very good water service with an 8-inch, or I believe it's a 6 or 8-inch water line running along Nobodere Farm Road. So we believe we'll be able to get sufficient water for domestic water service and also to be able to fully sprinkle the building itself. So you can see from this orientation and perspective view that it hasn't changed from the last time you have seen the plans. We have good elevations. We brought these elevations to the Historic District Commission, and they did not have any major changes to the building itself. They were only really concerned about the color. We originally were proposing white trim and white doors, but they thought anything but white. So we have since then revised and considered a gray for the trim and a blue accent for the doors. And that's what we're going to bring back to the commission, Historic District Commission, next time we go there. So that was favorable in the fact that we don't have to make any major changes to the exterior view of the building. Again, this shows the lower level where we have a walkout basement, access to the storage area, and we will have a window well. This is the current basement plan that we will be doing in our base bid, which shows large open area, storage, and then access to mechanical room. This would be lockers and a stairway down. In a build out for the first floor, this is the similar layout to what we saw last time. We have a series of individual rooms, which all have ensuite bathrooms. We have larger rooms for accessible facilities. And also we have a larger 1-bedroom unit, which would be the manager's apartment. We have nice open access for the living area, which has access to the basement stair. And we have a large open area for kitchen that comes off onto a rear and a side patio. Our basement possible build out for the apartment is this layout plan. We are going to do this as an alternate line item, depending on how the funding comes in. We anticipate getting our first estimate for this from CHA estimators by the end of this month. And with that, I will open it up to questions from the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding the layout and the process?
Mhm.
I think it looks good with the spin and as you've the adjustments that have been made and refined. So let's hope for HDC approval.
Yeah, I think Ethan and myself have had some pretty good conversations, and we were happily surprised to find that there was no major comments from the Historic District Commission that said they wanted to change anything with the building itself other than the site orientation. And I think this will hopefully keep the residents of Park Circle happy in the fact that we've tried to maintain it with as much distance as possible from Park Circle for this current building.
Great. Nobody else has anything further. We'll move on. Thanks again, Mr. Cox.
Thank you.
Mr. Carberg.
Okay, for the South Apron expansion project, there's been significant movement on this project since the July meeting. So to recap, we had issued the project packaged as a base bid for partial ramp for about 30,000 square yards of apron and the associated lighting, signage, drainage, noise monitoring, security cameras, and the stockpile. Alternative 1 included replacement of 7 catch basins, and alternative 2 added in about 7,500 square yards of ramp. The reason we did this is we wanted to still have a project in case bids came in over estimate and over what FAA had available. Unfortunately, we did only receive one bid, which was for 36.5 million for the base bid, 40.8 million for alts 1 and 2, which was over our estimate and over FAA's discretionary spending. So we got together, we regrouped, and we de-scoped the project by 25%, which was the maximum allowable amount under the relevant law without going back out to bid. So we reconfigured the project to approximately 25,000 square yards of apron and the associated lighting, drainage, stockpile, and submitted that to FAA. FAA, to their credit, went out and was able to come up with additional federal share funding for the full $40.8 million project amount. The breakout for that amount is listed here in the shared screen. FAA will fund 32.4 million, the airport will fund 6.6 million, and Mass DOT will fund 1.8 million. A couple of the items I wanted to be sure to call out for everyone's review is that the airport share is about 16%. Typically on AIP projects, our share is 5%. However, we did initially elect to take on a number of ineligible items to support our noise programs, our PFAS work, and a few other elements associated with work that we just felt we should do as part of our compact with the community. And this is an additive amount to our 5% sponsor share. However, these are highly leveraged funds. We are getting a lot of support from the FAA for our contribution, and it's well worthwhile. While we were notified by the FAA of their intent to fund, we are waiting for their grant award letter for our official confirmation. Next step for that will be for the commission review and vote to accept. Couple implications for the commission's consideration. Really, I think the FAA brought a lot of funding to the table. I think this project had a lot of support. And I want to thank our stakeholders for that. Our share has increased only incrementally with the additional funds that the FAA is providing, and they are highly leveraged and well leveraged. However, we should keep in the back of our minds our rates and charges assessment that we will typically take on this February. In rough numbers, our sponsor share will be $6.6 million, financed over 20 years and 32,000 annual general aviation transient operations. It's an increase of about $15 per ramp night per aircraft. Another way to look at this is our debt payment of about $330,000 per year on top of existing $2.5 million in ramp fee income. It's about a 13% increase on ramp fee. So philosophically, we will need to think about how we want to assess this cost recovery on our general aviation ramp fee. And staff will work with the commission on identifying that. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot that happened since the last meeting. Be more than happy to take any questions. I'll note that Mr. Laston is also in attendance. I might call on him if necessary.
Anyone, questions, comments, concerns? It looks like we're getting there.
We're getting close.
Thanks for all your hard work, Noah.
That's quite, that was quite, and Mr. Lasden as well. I appreciate all the efforts that you both put into that sort of on a very short notice, and I'm somewhat surprised it felt the way it did, but that's great. And manager's report, please.
Okay, to begin with project updates for AIP projects for Taxiway Golf, we reviewed our alternate fall ramp operation with a relocated center line with air carriers and air traffic. We may elect to push the project start back to September 28th to accommodate United Airlines last day. But I think we have good progress to reach an operational plan. We will have to temporarily locate a tug on hook point taxi lane box at Bravo, but we believe we can all manage that safely and effectively. For the airport master plan update, we have a stakeholder review meeting, the first of 3 on August 23rd. We will hold this in the ARF training room. It's not a public or recorded meeting, but I do intend to report out on it for the September Commission meeting. No update for geometry. We just gave one for the southwest ramp. No update for the terminal optimization. We have awarded the ARF truck bids to Oshkosh, and we've awarded the tools to Industrial Protection Services. We'll present both to the Commission after the FAA grant is issued. For non-AIP projects, hangar development, we met on site with representatives of Hagedorn Aviation. We think they provided us with a good concept for updating Hangar 8 and providing the airport some dedicated GSE storage opportunity as well as flexibility for the site. I will be proceeding with negotiating terms with them with the hope of presenting a lease for your review late fall or early winter. For general GA hangars, we are dealing with a concern at the staff level of increased ramp rash and the cost of responding to these ramp rash incidents for moving aircraft in and out of hangars exceeds the income that we realize from these hangars. What I intend to do is reach out to some of our hangar occupants and discuss some of our concerns, and I don't know what the end result will be. I might recommend that we potentially reduce occupancy, or we discuss a liability waiver where we're not necessarily responding and moving tenant aircraft for them. I want our GA tenants to be part of this. I don't want them to think I'm taking on action without consulting them. But as anyone who owns a plane knows, that even small ramp rash scratches investigations are very costly. We want to provide an affordable hangaring opportunity, but at the same time, I don't want the airport to go backwards in this cost center. So we'll move forward with that. Lightning arresters, we're going forward with some smaller level work to identify inline surge protectors we can install at some key locations, such as the fuel farm. We're currently reviewing a task order from McFarland Johnson to relocate the fence related to the bunker leaseholds. For RFP and bid status, we're waiting on the vendor signature for the IFB for automated doors. I've already updated the South Ramp expansion projects. No update for terminal optimization. Thank you for your approval for the declaration of surplus property for a portion of lots 77 and 79. We will develop that RFP for release. And likewise, we will develop the RFP for the impound lot. For the potential RFP for Sun Island or the town DPW campus, as part of the appraisal packages that we've received an updated price for this area of Sun Island Road. I will reach out to town administration with a pro forma so they can discuss and have the most up-to-date information as they evaluate on the suite of sites. An informational item, Burns McDonnell, which was our other on-call planning contractor, declined the award. I appreciate that they reached out to us and they formalized that they would not be interested. We had awarded them one project for updating markings. We have since awarded this project to McFarland Johnson. And that segues into my operational update. As an FAA inspection item, some of our markings were written up on runway 624. We're now scoping this project with McFarland Johnson for them to design and manage the bid for work this fall. For fuel supply, we continue to work through a number of logistical challenges through the month of July. Since our July meeting, a few updates. From July 23rd to 29th, the airport limited uplift to GA transient operators to 300 gallons per arrival per day. The purpose was to preserve our limited inventory for life flights, scheduled service, and to inconvenience the fewest number of passengers and operators as possible. Our median uplift is 300 gallons, meaning that half of our GA customers uplift 300 gallons or less, and we're not inconvenienced. Half of our customers uplift 300 gallons or more, with a few of them taking very large uplifts. And there was some operational convenience associated with that. We still sold between 9,500 and 20,000 gallons per day in spite of the restriction, but we were able to recover inventory after that week. Sales have since recovered quickly and are where we hoped they would be. Without any further supply disruption, we're on pace to finish the season without any further restrictions. Few additional items. We did run into some issues and some expressed concern. Unfortunately, no tamming a limit of 300 gallons is not a no tammable criteria. I wish it was. We do have to rely on promoting that locally. Through word of mouth, through emails, and through on-site notices. We did work to notify our largest operators directly. We do have contacts for NetJets, FlexJets, a couple of the larger operators, but there are a lot of small and independent operators who we weren't able to notify. If there's the next time, we now have more email addresses to circulate. We did experience a range of responses. I credit airport staff for acting professionally. We had one over-the-top incident with an operator. I've reached out to the operating company to discuss their group's response, and we will move forward from there. Ramp capacity, we had issued various runway 1533 closures and ramp restrictions. These restrictions took the form of wingspan restrictions, most often to aircraft over 79 feet. In wingspan, we felt that these were very effective in keeping congestion manageable and limited only to the GA ramp. It did not spill over to affect North Ramp tenants or scheduled service operators. On the 21st, we hosted First Lady and the attendants military operations. I wanted to thank staff for their handling of the Executive One level visit during a busy weekend. Following that, during the week of 7/24, we had back-to-back flat tire incidents and disabled aircraft on the runway. Credit staff for their safe and rapid response. So I wanted to credit Joe and Rob for responding to a lost iPad that was lost somewhere on the mainland in a rental car. The rental car found its way to Nantucket and then to the airport. The owner of the iPad was able to ping the signal located, and we were able to work with the rental car operator and repatriate that. So there's a good outcome there. As a reminder, for special town meeting in November, we have two articles, one zoning, one appropriation. And we did reschedule in July, the September meeting to September 19th. So I wanted to make sure commissioners had that on their calendars. For our personnel report, Michael Moran, who has been a returning seasonal operations employee, has accepted an ops specialist position. The great news there is that we have returned to full staffing of 8 people, although it will take a little bit of time to send Mike to hot fire and get him fully up on equipment, but this is really good news for the airport. We still have the upcoming retirements of Linda True and Lenny Liebert. These positions are still not backfilled, but we are advertising. We held a cookout to honor and celebrate our seasonal workers who are returning to school or leaving soon. I wanted to thank them, and I wanted to thank Deb for organizing them and our commissioners who were able to attend. Unfortunately, we will be short-staffed as they return home, and that includes the upcoming Pops and Opera Cup events, but we will do the best that we can. Any questions before I move on to statistics?
Just one, Mr. Carver, or I'll open it back up, but on the NOTAM for the fuel, where we can't put it out all the time, if you're actually running short, is that something that you could put out? So if it's not the operational, in other words, how, you know, when we hit a certain point, then it gets issued, is that correct?
Correct. So my understanding is that we're limited in our NOTAM ability to NOTAM that fuel is either available or unavailable. Anything that doesn't fit those two categories is considered a local restriction and can't be promoted through the NOTAM system.
Okay. Did anyone else have anything further?
I just want to reiterate, thanking Deb and the staff for the invite, and the cookout was great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be sure to let Deb know.
Great. And with that, we'll move on to commissioners' comments. Any
That was my comment.
commissioners have anything for any future agenda items? I have one. I was contacted by Mr. Rosenbaum, the chair of the Vineyard Commission, and he actually reached out to a few of the regional airports, and they're working on trying to establish a program for high school students to encourage sort of an advanced placement course related to aviation technicians and maintenance. And so I would like to look into if that's something that we, you know, may be able to support in some manner. And the other thing that he mentioned to me was that a few years ago, the Vineyard had Commission established a scholarship fund related to aviation. So I'd like to also put that as sort of a not highest priority type of project, but something to have as a future agenda item, and see if staff could work on that a little bit and what alternatives might be out there, you know, in compliance with all applicable, you know, rules or regulations and strings, if you will. I just wanted to run that sort of up the flagpole, and I'm sure everybody was kind of on board. If you had any concerns with, you know, with working on that and bringing it back to the entire commission. Okay, so I had already mentioned it to Mr. Carberg and forwarded that email. So again, I don't want to see sort of middle of August staff resources at the highest time of the year, but for something that could be looked into, and we can let them know that, you know, we have an interest to the extent that you know, the devil's in the details, of course, but we'll look into it and ask them for maybe some more information about both the program and the scholarship that they established.
I think that sounds good, Art.
Anybody else have anything further, Mr. Carberg?
We do have statistics, since it's.
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry, I flew right right by that from operations. I thought that the other was on personnel, so that was why I missed the statistics when you're talking about all the great folks. But please go ahead.
Well, it's my fault. I skipped statistics and went right to personnel. Okay, for June, total operations are down nearly 13%, and year to date they are down 9.5%. Southwest ramp operations were down 22%. Planements were down 5.2% in June and up 0.4% year to date. For the Boston market in June, Cape Air was down 22%, JetBlue was up 33%. For Charlotte in June, American was down 51%, however, that's one flight versus two from year over year. For DCA in June, JetBlue was down 21%, American was down 56%, with American being the result of fewer flights, JetBlue being a market response. So for New Bedford, Cape Air was down 17% in June. United out of Newark was down 31% in June. JetBlue out of White Plains was down 26%. Cape Air out of Hyannis was down 76%. For JFK, Delta was down 21%, and JetBlue was up 19%. In LaGuardia, Delta was up 2%. JetBlue, I believe they did not offer service at LaGuardia at this time last year. So it is not applicable. The Cape Air in the Vineyard was up 94%. I'd caution that's 31 passengers versus 16 for the year prior June. Philadelphia was down 55%, again due to fewer flights. O'Hare was down 87% on American, again down to fewer flights. In May, I reported that large air carriers are all up, but because of the timing of operations, we should wait for June before we analyze the performance. I'm glad we did. In June, we had three major issues. We had bad weather, both sort of overall as a meta. It was a cool start to June. It was also foggy, which led to flight cancellations. We had national issues with air system performance, debt ceiling concern, which also helped slow down visitation to the island. So there were likely a number of factors related to these numbers for June. Jet A gallons sold, however, were up 3% in June. If you recall, we closed the month very, very strong. Jet A gallons sold are down 8%. I'm sorry, down 18. I had 18%, but it's 8 in July. Down 8 in July. Again, due to the sales restrictions that we implemented. 100 low lead is down 20% in June and down 18% in July. Freight was down, let's see here. I'm sorry, this is an old slide that I didn't make the update available to Bionis, and my apologies. Freight is actually down 25% in June, and we'll correct the official packet. I believe this is also due to a number of flight cancellations and a softening economy somewhat at the beginning of June. UPS was up significantly. Cape Air, Freight, FedEx, and the mail were all down. For noise complaints, Cameron Woods, our new environmental coordinator, has taken on the noise complaints and is getting us caught up and addressing the backlog. We had 8 noise complaints in June, which is consistent for the month. And we ended the fiscal year at 102, which is consistent for our annual number. Any questions on statistics?
Anyone? No.
Fine for me.
All right. And then any more on personnel, or you had already, that was all covered? Good.
That was it.
Okay. Any other commissioners' comments? Public comment? I'm seeing none. Thank you all, and we will entertain a motion to go into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda. Sorry, I didn't. Didn't have page 2 printed on the one that I keep here for notes. Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the chair is determined in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the airport commission. Clause 3, discuss strategy to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. And item D, clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pursuing legal claims against the manufacturer of PFAS and other potential sources of PFAS, where the chair has determined an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission, not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Wiscaron?
Aye.
Chair and Mr. Marks? And the chair votes aye. Thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording, please.